So in this video, I'll be doing a quick review of the Uni-ball Jetstream Edge 3. This is I would say, highly awaited multi-pen version of the Jetstream Edge ballpoint pen or hybrid pen, whatever you want to call it. We'll get into that in a minute. And it's definitely one of the more highly awaited pens of 2020. Not a lot of pens were released this year, but this is definitely one that has gotten a lot of attention to it, relatively speaking. So this is a follow-up to the popular Jetstream Edge, which was the first oil-based. So like in Japan, they would call it a ballpoint, but in the US, we might call it a hybrid pen with a writing tip that went down to 0.28 millimeters. So basically, other pens have been released in 0.28 and 0.25 millimeter sizes, but they've only been gel pens. In this case, Mitsubishi Pencil Company or Uni-ball, whatever you want to call them, came out with a hybrid ink that went down to 0.28 millimeters, so the thinnest ever ballpoint style pen. It was a pretty big deal last year, and a lot of people bought the Jetstream Edge. I don't think people were universally in love with it, but it was pretty cool for what it is, and it was good for people with very small writing and good for journaling and stuff like that. In November or so of 2020, they released the Jetstream Edge 3, which is a multi-pen. So it uses the same refill as before, the 0.28 millimeter hybrid refill, but now we have a multi-pen design. So as you have seen from me playing with it, it takes a lot of the design cues from the previous pen. We have that wire clip, a metal grip, plastic body that's I would say a high end, so it's very nicely made. But then also a few things were changed. We have obviously a multi-color selection mechanism because this is a multi-pen, and they opted for a twist mechanism. So you twist this top and it changes the color, and you can keep going and twisting and twisting. You can go the other direction and twist. There's no button to push. You just twist to push it out. It locks, twist to retract it, twist to go to the next color, it locks again. And it's an okay mechanism. It feels a little bit flimsy. I don't really love it. It feels kind of imprecise, but it is quick, and it is nice that it always keeps going. It doesn't stop, then you have to turn back or anything like that. So this kind of looks like an electric plug, the way you would attach two wires. So it is a little bit flimsy. This piece is not metal. From the side, there's no color indicator. There's these little lines, but they don't do anything. They line up at the center here, and then they line up at the center. That's it. There's no color indicator. To figure out what color you're at, you have to look at the top and then use the middle of your clip as the indicator. So now I look at it, I see red, and now we can see here is color coordinated. You could probably just barely make out that that's red. Turn it here. Now we have black, and it's lined up here, so black. Turn it so nothing is lined up, and obviously there's nothing there. So the color indicator works, but it's at the top. It's a little bit inconvenient. Clearly the colors are really small. Like you could barely see that. So it's not a very successful color indicator. I guess it kind of maintains the aesthetics of the pen and keeps it looking like the Jetstream Edge, which had this really interesting design, but functionally the color indicator is bad. And aesthetically, if you're going to go for choices like maintaining strong aesthetics, making this look like a wire, like a plug that you would turn and to screw two wires together and cap it off, is probably not the choice I would make. Again, that wire clip I really like, has a contrasting color, and they did this with the white Jetstream Edge using that cool red clip. The other ones don't, they have black or silver clips, but the white has a cool red clip. The body is a larger hexagonal body. It has some rounding here that's quite nice. It just gives it a high-end feel, but it is plastic. It's a nice gloss plastic, very smooth, and has a feeling of quality. Uni Jetstream, doesn't say Jetstream Edge, and it doesn't say Edge 3. They maintain the Jetstream brand, despite the Edge being really different than the rest of the Jetstream line. Here's the grip. The grip is very similar to the one on the Edge. It's some sort of metal. It's pretty slippery. It feels like an aluminum, maybe a magnesium or zinc or something like that, but it's very light, has these long vertical lines here, so it's not knurled, but has these grip lines. Pretty good. I like it better on the Jetstream Edge. It was a little bit more elegant, but definitely works here. And then we get to the last and maybe most interesting part of the pen, and that is this writing tip is actually off center. So if you look at this, you can see the writing tip is higher than the center point of the pen. It's not quite at the top line, but it's definitely higher. And if you look at it from in the profile, you could see the lines of the pen are just a little bit odd. This is a little bit too high, the grip. Does it get wider or does it not? We saw a flared out grip with the Jetstream here. I think it's flared a tiny bit. I have to get the calipers out, but it's not flared enough to make a difference. So we might as well say it's not. But we definitely see this off-center, higher than normal writing end. And that means the nose piece is made of plastic, probably just to accommodate the more complex angles here, which is a little bit of a disappointment. It was metal on the Jetstream Edge. It was part of the grip. I think. I don't have one with me right now to say, unfortunately. But it definitely is plastic here. And what happens is when you have a higher, like raised or elevated or just higher up writing tip, is Uni-ball says it's more accurate because it's more in line with your vision and it's easier to maintain control as it's higher up as opposed to in the center point. I'm not entirely sure I buy it. I guess it is easier from a visibility standpoint, but if you've been writing your whole life with pens that are centered, now all of a sudden a pen is not centered, maybe it's better, but the fact that it's different than what you've been doing for your entire life means it might be better conceptually, but practically it's worse, or functionally it's worse. So I haven't noticed a huge difference, but I can't see it being a real advantage for this pen unless you're using this pen only and getting really used to that design. It's worth noting that other pens have used this design with a raised or off-center writing tip, and like the Lamy Dialogue 1, the ballpoint version, comes to mind. The pen uses the refills from the Jetstream Edge line, and that is the SXR hybrid refills, or emulsion, or whatever you want to call them. But the SXR line, in this case, it's that little refill, looks just like the SXR 80s, but this one is called the SXR-203-28, so it's 0.28 millimeter, and it uses this sort of plastic body with a push-in design and color coordinated tips there, as you could see, and you could see that really interesting kind of flared design or bevel design, or whatever you want to call it, and that's how they get that tip to go down to a tiny little ball with a 0.28 millimeter writing tip. This piece, the grip piece, you can see it's metal with the plastic lining, and it's simply a press fit onto here, which is not something you see very often. Usually this would be a screw-on type piece, but in this case, it's actually, you just pop it on. Press fits are really not ideal because over time, like this piece or the piece inside that sleeve inevitably wears out. So you don't see a lot of antique press fits. You know, this pen is largely plastic and the retail price is maybe $23 or something. So I don't think they're designing it to be an antique or to one day be an antique, but generally speaking, press fits are not great. The continuous twist design is interesting because Jetstream uses this in some of their high-end prime pens. Normally Jetstreams just use some sliders to pick your color or whatever, and they've been successful with that. But once you get into the Jetstream Prime line, like they have a Jetstream Prime, I think 3-color or 4-color, and their highest end model is a full twist. It's all metal, and you twist the top of the body or the lower, and you just pick the color you want using that. So Uni has kind of identified that twist mechanism and used it kind of a little bit more down market here in the Jetstream Edge. Not that far down market though. So this is still a fairly expensive pen at $25, $26, whatever. So I think that pretty much covers the basics. Just I will say that it's fairly comfortable to write with. I don't love the off-center writing tip, but it hasn't really bothered me. The pen feels a little bit flimsy just because it's so plastic. It was better with the Edge because it was a smaller pen and it wasn't as big of a deal. But now you have a really big piece of plastic here, and when it's just the volume of the pen is bigger and the weight doesn't greatly increase, it doesn't feel as nice. It feels a little bit more flimsy. And again, it's a more expensive pen. So as far as writing goes, it's the same refill as before. And this is where I would say the pen, Uni or Mitsubishi Pencil Company, whatever you want to call them, should be commended because they were able to get a nice writing 0.28 millimeter refill and scale it down, like a nice writing Jetstream ink refill and scale it down to be 0.28 millimeters. Previous pens in this size, like 0.25 millimeter, high-tech Kaleido C's and stuff like that, you really have to write with them at a very steep angle, basically vertical. The Kaleido or Kaleido, whatever you want to call it, they had to essentially be vertical, and they were extremely scratchy. Here, you get that tiny size, 0.28 millimeter, in a hybrid ink, which has been impossible to pull off before this, and it writes really well. I can scribble with it without thinking. And it's not locking up, it's not ripping into the paper. It's really quite impressive that they did this. But if you've been using the Jetstream Edge, then of course you've probably seen it do this in blue, black, and red already in 0.28 millimeter. So there's really nothing new here from a writing standpoint. I would just reiterate that the Edge 3 is a nice writer. You get real Jetstream ink with the really quick drying times. You lose some of the smoothness off a larger size of 0.5, or the pen is excellent in the 1.0 millimeter, and it's good in the 0.38, and it's basically good throughout the line. I love it in the 1.0 millimeter though. And yeah, you get all the strengths of the Jetstream ink, but now it's in that smaller size. I wouldn't say it's super practical for every day for everyone, because it is a thin line. It can be a little bit hard to read on some papers, but it writes, it's consistent, it's really reliable. So it's really impressive they were able to do this. So if you need a really thin pen, this is definitely my recommendation, the Jetstream Edge. I like the Jetstream Edge. I don't love the Edge 3 just because I don't really like the twist mechanism. But if you need a multi-pen with this refill, then it's worth checking out. Of course, you could get the SXR 80.28, whatever they were called, 230.28 refills and put them in a different Jetstream. That's definitely an option. But you'll be missing out on that nice metal grip and this design. So all told, it's a really interesting pen. I'm really happy they made it. I don't entirely love it. I would say if you like this pen, you like the aesthetics, get the Jetstream Edge. You could buy them for about $10 now, and it's a pretty solid pen. I don't think I really liked all the design choices they made in the multi, but I'm glad they released it. It's been a lot of fun playing with it. So that is the Jetstream Edge 3 multi-pen. Thanks for watching.